Welcome to I Wish You Could Hear This, where we explore great stories and simple proven steps to help you thrive in life, faith, and relationships.
In our research, we've heard hundreds of hope-filled strategies for marriage, parenting, leadership, and life that are grounded in science and consistent with biblical truth. And now you can hear them too.
I'm Shaunti Feldhahn.
And I'm Jeff Feldhahn.
Today, we are diving into something that every one of us deals with, which is anger. Whether it's blowing up in a marriage argument, whether it's getting frustrated with our kids, maybe getting irritated with that really frustrating colleague at work, we often don't really think about what to do with that anger in the moment. But what if we've been sort of subconsciously handling it entirely the wrong way? What if what we've believed about anger, especially the idea that we need to sort of vent it or get it out, is actually hurting us rather than helping us? Today, we're going to unpack some really surprising new and old research that challenges common assumptions. And we're going to look at some really practical changes that we might want to make to improve our relationships, our health, even our faith.
So that vented, that's conventional wisdom. I mean,
yes,
it takes all different forms, but you hear it. You got to blow off a little steam.
Yes.
You got to, share with a friend that you're frustrated about something, or you punch a punching bag or a pillow or something like that, or go for a hard run.
Yes.
So what you're going to unpack here is that might not be the best
it turns
way to
out
handle it.
No, and it has implications for everything about marriage, about parenting, our relationships, everything. So here's the issue, just so you all know the biggest, sort of the big picture, and then we're going to unpack it, is that it turns out all those things we've been told to do actually activate the anger system rather than reduce it.
Our internal anger system.
Exactly. And so being able to regulate that anger and respond productively, kind of like, in your anger, do not sin. It doesn't say, the Bible doesn't say anger is a sin.
Correct.
Just says, in your anger, do not sin. And so being able to kind of control ourselves, figuring out a productive way of handling it, it turns out doing that in the moment, especially whether it's us regulating our own anger or knowing how to deal with someone else's, it turns out it's the opposite of what we've often been told. So there's these couple of studies.
Okay.
That I thought would be really helpful to unpack. Two different studies that I found to be really, really interesting about anger. One was a classic study from 2002, I think, that really changed how psychologists and researchers view anger, but even though it's been more than 20 years, it hasn't really percolated down to the popular market.
Okay.
So one reason why we need to talk about it. And then there was a study from just a few months ago, and both of these have really practical implications. We'll put links to these in the show notes.
So what's that first study?
So the first study is from a researcher who's well known in this field named Brad Bushman from Ohio State.
Oh.
I know.
So this is on anger, and I'm sorry. Well, anyone who's listening to
this podcast from Ohio, let's just say
Jeff is from Michigan, went to the University of Michigan. So
a
the
passionate
Ohio State
Wolverine fan.
Maybe there's anger somewhere in there. So we'll let you talk.
Okay, yeah. But this guy, Brad Bushman, has done some phenomenal research on this for 25 years. And so this was a study more than 20 years ago where the way that they did this, it was a big experiment, and it really blew open the idea that the best way to deal with anger is to try to get it out and blow out, vent and blow off steam. So what he had everybody do is the participants in the study wrote an essay. And then there was this partner that was kind of behind a screen. Like it was you were told the partner was in another room. There wasn't actually a partner. It was the researchers.
Okay.
But
which is the way they
always do it. They trick you. Anyway, but what happened is the partner was reading your essay and is going to give you feedback. And when the feedback came back, it was really harsh. It's like, this is the most idiotic thing. Who is this person? Did they not graduate from high school? You know, like that kind of stuff designed to make you feel angry. Okay. And so then after that feedback, after they're all jacked up and feeling angry, the researchers divided them into 3 groups. So 3 experimental group. One group got to hit a punching bag while thinking about the person who criticized them.
Okay.
Okay. That is the vent your anger group, right? That's what counselors used to say. Go punch a punching bag. Go outside and, you know, hit the pavement and run real hard. Another group, the second group, got to hit the punching bag. So doing the exact same thing, but they were told to think about something that was completely unrelated to anger. They were told to think about getting physically fit while they did it. Okay. And the third group were told, oh gosh, the partner's computer is broken. Here, just sit here quietly for a second. I'm going to go fix it. For 2 minutes, they just sat there. They weren't doing anything.
Okay.
While
that,
the researcher
that wouldn't be the group that I would be happy to be in.
just sitting there for
Right.
2 minutes. Yeah. And, you know, they were told there was a reason for it. Hang out, we'll be back. And it just so happened to be exactly 2 minutes that they were sitting there. Then the next step, so still, you've got those 3 groups. Now the next step was everybody played a game that was a reaction time. And they were supposedly playing it against the person who had criticized them, their partner. And if they won, they were given the option to sort of punish that person by blasting them with a loud noise if they won the round. And they got to choose how loud and how long the blast
Oh, this
was.
sounds really good.
Okay.
But I also think I know where this is going.
Yes, exactly. So here's what they discovered. And this was overwhelming. The numbers, the statistics were overwhelming. The people who had physically vented their anger by punching that punching bag while thinking about the person that made them mad, they ended up blasting that much louder, much longer noise. They were more angry. They were more aggressive, not less. The group that was told to punch the punching bag but think about getting physically fit, first of all, they didn't punch the bag as long. And secondly, they were also less aggressive, less angry. And the group that was told to do nothing while I go fix this computer and just happened to be exactly 2 minutes while they sat there waiting, that group was the least angry and the least aggressive by far. Like it wasn't even close.
Wow. So this was a study from back in the early 2000s.
This was the one that really changed everything in the
Right.
mental health and psychology field, but that most average people don't know yet.
Okay, you mentioned that there was a second study.
Yes, a much more recent
Can you-
one that just came out a
Okay.
few months ago. And we'll put both these in the show notes. This second study was what's called a meta-analysis, which is basically a study of studies. So they did a study of many studies about anger. And what they discovered is the same thing, but a little more nuanced, which is that the most effective way to manage anger it completely debunked the old idea of all those other things about getting it out. That's called like the catharsis theory, that getting it out will help. It completely debunked it and said, nope, across all these studies, those were always the least effective approaches. Like even today, people are like told, go to a rage room. Like, no. Those are going to make things worse. But what they found is that the reason that they made things worse is that they increase physical arousal. And the physical arousal is what's keeping the anger stirred up. And so all those approaches, venting to a friend, going for a hard run, hitting a punching bag, like all those things, they increase the arousal of the sympathetic nervous system, which is often called like the fight or flight kind of system. It's what allows you to like run from danger, basically.
So in other words, those things that you do in those venting things,
Yes.
they tend to jack you up rather than calm you down. And you know, it's funny. You know this is true. It's in our common sense level, you know, because look, there are dark corners of the internet, and in some places, you know, people find common shared trauma
Interests.
or
Oh,
interest
shared trauma. Yep.
or views on relationships or on politics. And you almost never, if you've ever been in any of those places and people are critical and
And they're all
angry,
being angry together.
you're never feeling more relaxed when you leave some
true.
kind of setting like that.
It's true.
Wow. And yet you're typing and saying, some people, I don't do this sort of stuff because
And
know.
I'm grateful that you don't.
I know that it impacts
It jacks you up.
It jacks me up.
Yeah.
So I steer clear of all of those things.
But they feel so good sometimes.
I
to
guess
be
so.
To be sitting and listening to a news commentator that's exactly capturing,
Yeah.
something that you think is so idiotic, and they're talking about how idiotic it is. It like makes you
Right.
feel, yeah, absolutely. But the problem is, it doesn't. In the end, it only makes you feel worse,
Right.
not better.
Right. Okay. So
Especially, by the way, if you're doing that active thing,
Right.
whatever that is, and thinking about the bad stuff at the same time. Because
Okay.
that's stimulating the sympathetic nervous system and ruminating on the bad thing at the same time. Like that's
got it.
the
Yeah, I'm good on that ruminating thing. So all right, I try to avoid that.
okay. So the researchers called that, like doing that is like trying to put out a fire using gasoline instead of water. Okay.
Not effective.
Not effective.
In most cases.
Like if you're going for a run and you're thinking about how mad you are at me,
Got it.
like no.
Well, I mean, that just never happens.
Never, ever,
The going
ever.
for a run thing.
Ah, okay. Anyway, okay. So all these studies, the meta-analysis of all of these others, it basically said the key, if you want to be able to handle your anger really well, whether it's in the moment with your spouse, whether you're feeling angry because they're doing something that you don't appreciate, the key is to step away from the anger rather than focus on it, and to calm down the body's stress response. So the way that it's put in sort of scientific terms is you have to get your body, and this will help anybody in any situation, to get your body to shift from the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight, flight system or freeze system, and instead shift from that and switch to the parasympathetic nervous system. And that helps regulate emotion, that helps return to peace, that helps bring us down to earth.
Okay. You've just used a couple of terms there
I know,
that
I
high school
know.
biology I could never keep straight
Okay.
ever.
Sympathetic and parasympathetic.
Yes.
Here's how you keep this straight. This is the only way I can keep it straight.
Okay.
One of my professors said this early on. I'm like, thank you, that helps. They said, think about the parasympathetic nervous system as a parachute. It's like, think of a parachute. What does it do? It brings you gently down. Okay? So parasympathetic nervous system, it brings you gently down. So the sympathetic is like, yeah, that's right, bad, whatever. Parasympathetic is like, I'm coming down from that. So that's the easiest way to think about it. And so what you're doing in order to manage anger, you have to, whether it's yours or anybody else's, you have to switch to the parasympathetic nervous system.
And this is absolutely the opposite of what, we as young boys growing up tend to be taught. And that's, you gotta release it. You gotta find an outlet, a physical outlet of doing something.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with, of course you need to find physical outlets. It's just in the moment when you're angry, not the time.
Okay.
When you're in the moment, when you're angry and you're jacked up, you're upset, the worst thing that you can do is go out and play really hard, like tackle football game.
Because, okay.
Now, of course, you were the captain of the football team in high school, you and Scott, I guess co-captains. You guys were taught to get jacked up and then go play and be angry at the other team.
That's the whole role of the coach in that halftime speech, is to talk about the other team, how they're disrespecting you in our school, and you should be angry at them, even though they're just guys like us.
And you're playing mad.
Right,
and,
you got to play mad.
And that's one of the things that helps you win. But I can just promise you, in marriage,
Not a good thing?
No,
okay.
it's
don't
not
play
gonna,
mad.
Don't play mad.
The simple takeaway from this.
Yeah, don't play mad.
Okay.
So this is something that I'd love to switch to, okay, what do we do about it? So we've had these years of thinking, I need to vent. Like you talk about boys being told to go get it out and, pound something. Girls, I don't know if we're told this, we're probably not told this, but what happens is often we'll sit around in groups of girls and talk about what is making us mad.
Okay.
Right? And so since those two things make it worse in the moment, what do we do differently? And I mean, you and I, over the years, you and I have studied this a lot because we've interviewed and surveyed more than 40,000 people.
And we've had moments of anger in...
Never.
Yeah,
never.
In our marriage. And, just in those years.
And
we've seen
how many
kind
years
of what...
has it been now?
31 years today.
Today, the day that we are recording this, is our 31st anniversary.
A good thing.
Yeah.
So, I think of, I've read certain studies, and I can't cite them chapter and verse, but it seems to say that folks tend to be happier as they age. Like I remember one that, the happiest folks, oftentimes are in their 70s. They've kind of lived life. They've learned a few things.
They've learned how to kind of let things go.
And do you think that's kind of it? That they don't allow themselves, they've learned those things that are just not productive to leading toward peace and happiness?
Well, kind of. We know this actually statistically because this was the 13th secret that didn't make it into the book.
In the Happy Marriages
book. Of the
book.
Happy Marriages book, where we found that these happy marriages, one of the things that they did was that they had learned to just kind of let some things go. And that was far more likely to happen as you got older and you'd been married longer. So as you got older and older, now we only surveyed people up to age 75, but I don't know what the numbers do after 75, but it certainly was true in our study that it was hardest for people who were in their young married years and got easier and easier as they got older to just kind of let some things go.
Well, in that book, I mean, there was a whole chapter, and one of the hypotheses was about bossing your feelings around and letting things kind of, keeping your feelings from bossing you around and taking,
ownership
and command over them.
Yeah.
And I mean, we didn't share it in the book, but when we were doing the research, we realized that, we're one of those happy couples.
And how did that happen?
Yeah.
There were plenty of years when we were always generally reasonably happy. There were there were seasons of, struggle, but overall, we weren't necessarily in the highly happy couple bucket.
I don't think either of us would have
put ourselves in that.
Yeah, maybe.
But by the time we did the study, we realized, wait a minute, we're in this highly happy bucket. How did that happen? And we tell the story in the book of how you realized it. And we should probably say we may have mentioned this on an earlier podcast.
We may have. And if that's the case, we don't remember it. But as I was telling Shaunti beforehand, look, the only people that will hear this story again and remember it, it's a really small number because you may have listened to all of our podcasts and maybe we've shared this, but chances are you may not remember it.
And we don't even remember whether we actually told this on the podcast.
So should I share the story real quick?
Yes, absolutely. And this is one, by the way, that Jeff shares whenever we do marriage events. And it's so simple, and yet it's so practical.
So here's the story. When Shaunti turned 39,
just a couple of years ago,
I got in my mind that I needed to do something really great for her 40th birthday. And, I've shared before that I am a terrible, terrible gift giver. That gene that maybe I haven't worked hard enough at it, but I'm really terrible at it. But on this particular, she's not disabusing me
if you're
of that
looking
idea.
at, you can see on YouTube, everybody else can't see this, but I'm like trying really hard to not nod, because
It's pretty true. So anyways, I got in my mind that I needed to step up my game here.
So this 1 year,
for her 40th birthday.
Present was astounding.
So what it was I decided to make a book for Shaunti, which would consist of a entry of every day of her 39th year, and it was going to be a year in the life of Shaunti.
So it was like a journal.
It was like a journal, and then I'd get it bound and hand it to her on the her birthday, which made that very last day of her 39th year really intense because I had to compile it,
finish it and get it printed,
get it and bound.
Yeah.
So, anyways, it was one of the hardest thing I've ever done, and for all the guys out there, I apologize for sharing that story because if your wife
nobody else is ever going to do this, guy. I'm telling the ladies out there.
Yeah,
this
and again,
unusual.
I was bad, so I had to do something. So, anyways, in that journey of journaling for that 39th year, what I'd find is that I'd take notes and I'd capture things along the course of the day. And by the end of the day, I'd go down to my home office and then kind of just type it out into a Word document that became this long Word document. And what would happen is I really wanted to be accurate and I wanted to be truthful of what had happened. And so I was capturing things like disagreements, things that we were, still at odds about, even when I went down to record or work in my office.
And so you're pounding the stairs down there. You're pounding the keys. I can't believe you did this and this and this and this.
And as I was doing that over the course of a week or maybe two early on in this, I got this thought that, if my kids read this 25 years from now, maybe they're going to go, Dad, you were kind of harsh in some of your criticisms there. And so I started to think about, okay, I don't want to just end each of these journal entries of how I'm feeling in this moment. I'd try to moderate that by reminding myself and writing it down of those great things that Shaunti does.
So you would be angry, you'd type it out, you'd go, oh my gosh, if somebody reads this, I'm going to look like a jerk. So what's something positive I can add at the end?
And they were just tons of things that, Shaunti does to keep our family running, to make me feel great. All of those things that she does that I oftentimes take for granted, and I don't share with her how appreciative I am for those.
So what it would look like, just so that everybody can picture it, when I eventually read it, it was like, I want to be honest that today wasn't a good day. Like, this was something like you had said you would have such and such done by the time I got home so that the kids, we could do X, Y, Z, and you lost track of time, you didn't do it, and I'm so mad, but you do so many other things.
Correct.
It was sort of that process.
And I
you
would
do so many other things well.
And I'd write those. I would be very specific about those things that I would write down. And what I found over time was that, when I was done with my entry and I'd walk upstairs and come to bed, all that heat and steam that I was feeling only 15 minutes earlier was either gone or significantly lessened.
Yeah.
And, I didn't really think about it. I didn't connect the dots at the time. And it wasn't until we were actually doing research for the Happy Marriages book, maybe 5 or 6 years later, that was the game changer
that you went,
in our marriage.
Oh my goodness.
At least for me.
Oh no, it was the game changer. I just didn't know what was happening. I just knew that suddenly we have this incredibly happy marriage. And by the way, can I point out that was one person changing something, with the other person not having any clue that it was even happening, because by definition, it was a surprise. But all year you did that. And what ended up happening from like an anger management standpoint that you told me that was even more interesting, and that fits with all those studies, is that it got to be enough of a habit
Right.
that even in the moment when we're arguing and you're thinking about what I'm going to say later tonight and I'm going to type it in, you're already thinking of, okay, what's the good thing that I can say
Right.
at that time? And then even in the moment that you're angry in our argument starts to make you less angry.
Right.
Because you're already applying that in real
Moving
time.
into the parasympathetic.
Sympathetic, exactly. You're moving into the parasympathetic nervous system.
Wow.
Totally. Without realizing
Without
that that's what
realizing
you're
it.
doing.
Yeah.
And so that to us is one of, I think, the key sort of things for a lot of people when you think about anger. And I'd love to like talk about some practical.
Yeah. So
like-
that's what we did.
Yes.
What are some general, I mean, most of the guys out there listening to this are not going to now all of a sudden go and try to write a book, you know, or a
Right.
journal or these sorts of things. What else can, any male or female,
Yeah.
what can they do in this
Anybody can do. So one of the things that I did in preparation for this podcast is I went through the studies and I looked at what are the most commonly mentioned things that really work, like from a practical standpoint. So I'm going to encourage you guys to get out a pen and like actually take notes or put this in your phone or something, because there's a few of these that you may not be interested in, but there may be one or two that you're like, okay, that would work for me. That's something that I could do in the moment. So there's some things that you can do in the moment when you feel yourself getting upset or when you're trying to avoid getting reactive about the anger of somebody else, whether that's your spouse or a child, a big one for children, okay? Or your colleague or whatever. So there's a few things you can do in any situation. There's a few that you have to have a slightly different situation. So the any situation ones that help sort of bring, activate the parasympathetic system, bring you down, calm down the arousal. First is actually, it's called box breathing.
Okay, so explain box breathing, because I didn't know what box breathing was 5 years ago.
Okay, so box breathing, you say take deep breaths, and sometimes that can work, and that's fine, but there is a way of doing it that actually has been proven to really help in a big way. And it's what like firemen do or policemen do or other first responders when they feel themselves getting traumatized, when they feel themselves getting really upset, they'll stop and they'll do box breathing. Okay. So it's basically think of your breathing with a box. And for those of you on YouTube, I'm going to actually show you with draw it in the air. So think of, you're taking a deep breath for 4 or 5 seconds. It's going along the bottom of the box. So
you're breathing in for 4 seconds, 4 beats.
So
okay?
breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going up the side of the box. So you're holding it. Let it out.
So you're
2,
exhaling
3,
for
4.
seconds.
And then
Holding it
hold
out.
it out. 2, 3, 4.
And then
and then
repeat.
start all over again. And you can do that 2 or 3 times. And it really calms your nervous system. So that's one thing. I mean, if it works for a fireman who's about to rush into a burning building, hopefully it'll work when you're about to respond in the moment because your colleague just criticized you in front of the whole team and you are really upset. And, okay, I'm going to sit here while everybody else responds for 30 seconds, and I'm going to do just a little bit of box breathing. And so suddenly you're more able to respond better.
Others?
So that's one. Another one, they've actually found prayer, believe it or not, actually helps calm your nervous system.
And I got to, at least in my personal experience with prayer, I'm taking the attention off of myself.
Yeah, and putting it on God.
And attempting to listen and attempting to understand.
Yeah. And it we have to be careful that we're not using prayer as just a tool to get what we want, right? This is true prayer. It's about connecting with the Lord and saying, I need some help here because I am ready to just strangle this colleague. I don't know what to do. Lord, give me peace, give me clarity, whatever, just having that short time with the Lord for that moment. Okay. Another thing that you can do in any situation is like, the technical term is progressive muscle relaxation. And it's basically you literally tense muscles, a particular muscle in your body. So like you tense your arm muscle. You're just sitting there in the meeting. Nobody can tell, but you tense your arm muscle for a couple of seconds and then relax it. And then you tense another one. And then
that's
you
not
relax
the
it.
same as punching,
Nope.
a pillow.
It's tensing and then relaxing,
okay.
and it lets it out. Okay. It's not letting it out in the bad way. It's engaging your parasympathetic nervous system. So there's a few other things that you can't necessarily do in every situation, but they may work for you. Any kind of gentle rhythmic movement, apparently, according to the studies. So don't go for a hard run, and think about how mad you are, but go for a walk. That's great. Like, it's gentle. Just no high intensity cardio or whatever, or do stretching or whatever.
And maybe not listen to heavy metal
Maybe
while
not.
you're on
Yes,
that walk.
maybe not.
Okay.
But speaking of music,
Okay.
one of the things that they've actually found in some of the neuroscience, which I find really interesting, is that listening to music, calming music, right? Not heavy metal, calming music of some kind. And even if you hum to it, it stimulates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is that central nerve that actually is the pathway for the parasympathetic nervous system. And so when you hum, it apparently tells your vagus nerve and your parasympathetic system, you're safe. The humming actually does that. Nobody knows why. Well, actually, they might have figured out why by now, but as of the studies that I read, they didn't know why. They just had found out that humming will do that. And of course, worship music, like that is even better. Like that gets you focused in the right direction.
Right.
And then a few others is distract yourself. Like this is one that Brad Bushman and some of those studies talks about a lot. Like if you're mad because your wife or your husband said such and such and they forgot this, or they did this with the kids and they promised they would never do that again, and you're furious, okay, maybe you have every right to be furious, but it's not going to help you respond well. And so go do something else. Go out and garden. If you're a gardener, go out and putter in the yard. Watch a funny YouTube video. Like distract yourself so you're not thinking about it, and then come back to it. And then finally, it's what you did, which is to actively, the positive distraction is positive about that situation. So your colleague that is criticizing you in the meeting in front of everybody, you can still think about, like, you know what, this is driving me crazy, but I'm grateful I have this job.
Right.
And I'm grateful that my boss knows my work and isn't going to be overly attuned to this. And I'm grateful that I have colleagues who are great to work with, even if this one person isn't.
Right.
Like, think about what you can be grateful for. So anyway,
Wow.
all those things.
So next time I'm mad, can I go
At
out?
me?
Yeah. Well, okay.
Whatever. Okay.
Can I go out and mow the lawn?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can do that as long as, again, as
I'm
long
not
as it's
running
not
behind
running,
the
and as
mower.
long as you're not thinking about how mad you are at me. Like if you're
Okay.
listening to a podcast or something, that's
Distract.
awesome.
Distract.
Distracting. Yeah.
Okay.
So I feel like we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
But there's one other application in marriage that I really want to mention, that I think is also very misunderstood. And it's that I will often hear from women, my husband, he just gets angry, right? He's not controlling himself, which maybe he's not. Like, that could be true.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily what's always going on.
So in the case of, let's say, in a man that he feels like his wife just second-guessed him in front of the kids.
He said to do something and then she said, no, you don't need to, kind of thing?
Yeah,
Like
that sort of thing.
contradicting him?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, is that, is that sense of, his anger that kind of flashes at that moment, is that him not being in control? Is what's going
Well,
on?
he may not be, right?
Right.
Like, again, in your anger, do not sin, but anger isn't a sin. And so what we found in the research that I think is actually was game changing for me was to recognize that your anger was often a signal of pain. It was often a signal of emotional hurt in the same way that if I were to cry, that would be a signal of hurt. And you wouldn't ever say it's wrong for me to cry if my feelings are hurt. But why is it wrong for you to get angry if your feelings are hurt? And if it tends to work, it's not always men, women, but it tends to sometimes go that direction.
And we're smart enough people that we know that there are certain thresholds on this.
Yes.
And anger,
yes.
Being angry is different from, yelling for the next, 20 minutes or making you feel intimidated through that anger.
Oh, that's abusive, right?
Correct.
Like if somebody
Correct.
is doing something and intimidating them. Now, I will say to all the men listening to this, I don't think you realize how naturally intimidating male anger is to women. Like, you are the safest husband ever. And yet, when you get angry, there are times that like my body, talk about your sympathetic nervous system reacting. It's like just, it's threatening, even though you would never be threatening, right? Like there's nothing to fear, but there's something about the way God created men that when that power is seen in anger, it can be pretty overwhelming. And I know that most men work pretty hard to try to rein that.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
try to rein that in.
Absolutely.
But just be aware that emotionally, guys, you may have to rein it in more than you think you do in order to not be intimidating.
Another guy would not be intimidated, perhaps, the same way.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
And every guy loves his wife. Like there's very few guys that are actually like, oh great, I like intimidating my wife. Like there are some jerks out there, but that's rare. And so just for the guys listening to this, just be aware. But for the wives listening to this, start seeing often that anger for what it is. It's like a little window into his heart. And it's saying, this is a tender heart that just got shredded. Like you didn't probably mean to hurt his feelings. You didn't realize that this was so hurtful. But the fact that he's angry means that it is. And you can like think back and figure out what it was. And maybe at some other point use that to start a conversation.
So you kind of teed us up for the conclusion, which is always our question. Like, what's the big thing that we should
the one big takeaway?
Leave someone with.
Yeah.
And if you were to ask me what it is with today, I'd say that anger doesn't need to be vented or ruminated on. It needs to be understood and then redirected. So if it's your anger, you can learn how to bring it down and bring down your nervous system.
Yeah.
By thinking of something positive or the various other methods that you described.
Yeah.
And if it's someone else's anger, I guess consider whether it might be a sign of pain, where, you said that that's often an indicator, the anger.
And you can use it as a learning tool. Like, wow, I think I hurt his feelings or I hurt her feelings, didn't mean to, so maybe tomorrow I'll ask about that. Yeah. So thanks to everybody for listening today. If this has been helpful, please share this episode with someone who you think might find it interesting, someone who might need it. And as always, tag us on all your social media channels. Thanks for listening to I Wish You Could Hear This. Remember to subscribe to our podcast. And as always, forward today's audio or video link to a friend, counselor, or pastor who would be encouraged.